Hello, everyone. Thank you. Hi, hello. I see we are live. Thank you for joining us today. This is, I hope, going to be a really interesting panel. I am Costanza Sciuba Caniglia. My role is the anti-disinformation strategy lead at the Wikimedia Foundation, and I will be your moderator today. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for joining, and I want to thank Access Now for co-organizing this event with us at the Wikimedia Foundation. This event is part of the Commission on the Status of Women here in New York, but we decided to host it online so that we could have more people participating in for more places in the world. So we have really great speakers today. Thank you so much to all of you for joining. Sandra, Manav, Marianne, Kat, I really look forward to this conversation. Before we jump in, I just want to give a little bit of framing about how we want to frame this conversation and what we would like to discuss today, why we organized this event with this question, which is a real question, not a rhetorical one. We really hope that this conversation will help respond to this, is what role digital public infrastructure and digital public goods can have in promoting gender equality online. Can they be a tool for it? And if so, how? As many of you know, this is a particularly crucial year in terms of digital global governance, with many different processes happening at once. And so as civil society, we feel that it's essential that we give input on what is the internet we'd like to see. Digital public goods have different definitions. We'll get a little bit more in this, and it's even more complicated when we move to digital public infrastructure. And we wanted to go back to the original definition of community-led spaces, and we want to explore how the spaces increase representation and achieve equality of information online, if they do so. One example of this digital public goods, and we can say digital commons, is Wikipedia, Wikimedia projects in general. Again, this is just an example, and today we'll explore some of the ways in which the Wikimedia community does this work, and especially related to gender equality. But we want this to be an example of many other spaces. We want to see this type of model increase and expand rather than being, just one exception. So we will discuss the critical need for robust digital public infrastructure that supports and safeguards digital public goods for everyone. And we think this is the premise to really fulfill, the premise of the internet. We think that an information ecosystem like that not only requires investment in technical infrastructure, but also supports for fields that produce and organize knowledge. And so we'll see how. And then one thing that I want to say is this community-led and public spaces are not necessarily perfect. In the case of Wikipedia, for example, there is still an issue of not equal representation of genders on Wikipedia. And so one of the ways we will explore this is to, again, see what the communities have done to change this. And we think this is really, really important because we have a vision of a world in which everyone can freely share in the sum of all human knowledge. And we definitely cannot achieve this when we miss so much knowledge about and from women. And this is not, today we talk about gender because this is framed in the context of the CSW, but of course, it's not just about gender. it's about increasing participation and equality for all. Information is power, and so we think it's impossible to build more equitable and just communities or more equitable and just world if the facts about large swaths of people's histories are not even known. With that, I'll close it here. I'll just give a couple of housekeeping notes. This is exclusively virtual. You can submit questions via the YouTube chat. The panelists will answer them at the end of the panel. We're gonna start with the first couple of minutes of opening statements from the panelists. And then we'll start with a little bit of a round of questions and then open for Q&A. So thanks for bearing with me for this long. And I will start with Marianne. Marianne is the #YID campaigner at Access Now. And she's a Venezuelan lawyer, digital rights activist, and fiction writer, currently based in Santiago, Chile. She is a expert on DPIs and these topics. She also works on identity and relationship with the body. She founded the digital rights NGO Acceso Libre. And she has done so much that I can't possibly tell everything. But you'll hear more from her soon. We also have with us Kat Townsend, who is an expert advisor for the World Wide Web Foundation. She has dedicated her career to intersection of technology and policy, and now leads the Web Foundation policy work, including the efforts for an online world free from gender disinformation and violence. She worked with national governments, global philanthropies on open data and transparency, and also serves on the board of Open Data Charter. We also have Sandra, who is the executive director of Women of Uganda Network. She's a dedicated advocate for digital rights and women's rights. She works with several digital rights coalition and Wikimedia-related projects. And she also is the diversity and content generation lead at the Wikimedia Community User Group Uganda. She's also a gender and ICT researcher, policy analyst, writer, and Wikimedian, and a women human rights defender. Manavpreet, it's also here with us. She's a passionate advocate for open knowledge and women leadership in the Wikimedia movement, and designs programs that empower women and bridge the gender gap. She works in India and the South Asia representative for the Movement Charter Drafting Committee, and also working for Global Wiki Women Collective. So Marianne, I'm going to start with you, and I would like to start from really defining what DPIs are and how we think of them. Is the general definition of DPIs that is being used today what we want to see, and if yes, not, why?
Thank you, Constanza. As you know, the DPI topic as a topic of discussion and policy has kind of exploded past year and this year. And so it's everywhere, and we cannot really talk about anything else because it's all there is. But actually, we have been talking about digital public infrastructure for about a decade in the community, I'm going to say. And when we said digital public infrastructure originally, we meant infrastructure that was supposed to allow us to engage in public and civic life in digital spaces. So that is a definition that has to do with the meaning of public spaces as we understand them offline, as we were talking a couple days ago, the public squares of the cities and the towns, the streets, everything that belongs to the common population and that is supposed to be maintained by the state, right? but maintained by the state and supported by communities. And like it's the concept that we all sweep the front of the door of our home, right? And there was this conversation, I'm gonna say 20 years ago already, that was about no, I'm 2030. I don't know, I'm too old. But it was about when public spaces offline started to close in replacement for a private space that were fulfilling public functions like malls, right? So we started moving from we're going to gather at the public square and we're going to hang out to we're going to gather at the mall. But the mall has a right to leave people out, to kick people out, has a right to place certain rules over it. And there were different discussions judicially about the public function of a place like the mall. Now, the conversation, like now and 10 years ago, is about Facebook, because Facebook is the equivalent of the mall. Facebook is not the public square, no matter how much we want it to be. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I'm just mentioning things owned by two people. But all of those places are the mall, right? And we need the public square, the digital public square. And so this is what we were talking about when we were talking about the public infrastructure. And this concept encompasses many things, and it can encompass what we are understanding today as digital public infrastructure, but not the other way around. The concept of digital public infrastructure as it's being presented today by the UNDP with the goal of the Digital Public Compact understands digital public infrastructure as infrastructures that are meant to deliver services specifically. So it is a concept of governance. It is a concept that is related to how the state can govern in citizens, which in turns might turn out to be a concept of surveillance. And then we end only talking about, and this is how I got into this topic that I hate, on identity, because I work on digital identity. So it says so that it is based on the pillars of digital identity systems and payment systems, digital payment systems. And then it needs to be interoperable, meaning that all of the systems that are part of this need to communicate with each other, share information, and it needs to be somehow installed or like built by a state with support of the private companies or whatever, but not with the support of the communities. The communities are not part of this. They are the governed, and they are there to provide consent, which is also another topic, and a very complex topic. And for me, other than this concept does not fulfill the actual need that we have, which is the need for the common space, the public space. It also is contrary to notions like anonymity that are extremely important in the life that we want our societies to have. Like you go to the public square, you don't expect every lamppost of the public square to recognize your identity, but these systems need you to have a legal identity that needs to be interoperable, that is recognized by all of the parts of it, while things that we create like Wikimedia or like Mastodon, for instance, things that can be administered by communities allow for anonymity, because anonymity is essential for this type of life in which we engage politically and socially to a degree of freedom, right? So no, the concepts are not the same concepts. There is a slight overlap, but mostly the overlap is in the name. And what I feel and what concerns me the most is that the concept that we talk about when we talk about the public infrastructure is being co-opted and pushed away by these big conversations, because they have the spaces, they have the real power to do this. And so the meaning of things, like the things that don't mean what they used to mean anymore. And now that means also that we don't have a lot of spaces to have that conversation, which is the conversation that we need to be having. I don't know if
Thank
I
you.
made sense.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And this was such a helpful framing for the whole conversation. Thank you so much. I also realized that I was so eager to jump into the conversation that I didn't give space for opening statements from all of you, but maybe we can make them as part of the conversation. So now that we started getting into the nitty-gritty of why we're talking about digital public goods and digital public infrastructure, Sandra, Manava, will look to you for concrete examples of how digital public goods include community and what is the community work. So Manava, I'd like to start with you. And again, if you want to mix it with an opening statement, feel free to do so. I really would like to discuss how this community-led model supports participation, especially for women, and why it's important to have those spaces for collaboration.
Yeah, thank you, Costanza. I think the way we are working on this, because I'm a Wikimedian. I have been working on this for years. I've worked as community member. I've been a part of strategic conversations. I've known the challenges that the communities face. I know the challenges of walking into a global room where people with different experiences and expertises are talking about this, and then what kind of limitations that we feel, and then we enforce on ourselves to be able to speak up in those spaces. And that's why I think the way I'm going to uh, participate in the conversations today is about emphasizing the need of community participation in this, and why it is important to actually include that, because we believe that digital public infrastructure can reach its full potential when built with safety, inclusion, equity, and sustainability in mind. And the way we are doing this is by making sure that the communities at the ground level are able to join in this. There are reasons why we believe that it's always easier to start from your own community, because there are low barriers of entry. It's simpler. You're working with your friends. The environment is safe. You have peers who can offer you support. And also, if we expect people to offer some room for women specifically to take leadership role, it's always easier to start in your own community and start with smaller projects, because the barriers are low, the risks are low. And then and in these smaller spaces, in these low community level spaces of engagement, the focus is on contribution. It's not on the credentials that one person holds. And often in the larger spaces, we focus on what credential one individual is bringing and what kind of experience and expertise they can add to the conversation. But in the community level spaces, we talk about primarily focusing on contribution, valuing what one person brings to that space. And that is something that can only be achieved through community led models. And then we have peer network and support, and we cannot emphasize enough on the importance of this peer support that we have in the movement, and that is needed for women to excel as well. Um, and beyond this, I think we focus on shared ownership as well, because even if it is a project that is working well, for example, like Wikipedia belongs to no one who contributes it. It belongs to everyone who contributes. And there is no one definition of contributor in the Wikimedia movement. Whatever contribution you are doing to build the project is enough, is valued, is recognized. And I think there's also a flexibility and accommodation that we have in the community level, which is much required for you to be able to acquire that experience, for you to be able to learn, to understand, and then grow when you're moving forward in the movement. So that's why I think the focus of the conversations for me would be to represent those community, to bring the experience that we hold as that comes from the conversations that we have been having with communities, especially from the recent Wiki Women camp that we had and the Wiki Women collective that we are forming as a digital space for women to talk about their needs and to advance the representation of women in the movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mana. Before we move to Sandra, I just wanted to ask you also a follow-up question, which is, when we don't have that participation, and I'm asking a leading question to the Wikipedia Needs Women campaign. So when that space and that community conversation doesn't happen naturally, what can we do to encourage that? And what is that campaign?
Okay, so I think the first need for, I think there are a lot of understandings and observations that we have in the movement, but the first and the foremost step is to actually ask. So the way we actually started this with the communities was we asked them for what kind of support is required for them to be able to take the next big step. Because for any growth, for any change in the movement, the first step is important. And I think the first step that was mentioned in the surveys that we ran was that there is support needed. There is a need for creating a unit which can provide specific support and environment and space for them to be able to talk about their challenges openly and freely. So we need to talk. We cannot base this on the basis of the data that we have entirely, because we still need to get in touch with all the people who are working on ground level to understand what their priorities are. There are different kinds of needs that actually shape one project on Wikipedia. There is nothing that works as an individual standalone project. This is all a collaborative space. We have been working and using a lot of research which has been done outside the Wikimedia, but about Wikipedia projects, and that kind of research has shaped our initiatives. It is going to also define how we are going to prioritize workflows moving forward. So we've also listed out the kind of research which is important for us to be able to understand our projects better, and to be able for and to also ensure that we are taking the right steps in the right direction. We want to use the research as a guiding point. We want to use data as the guiding point for any kind of strategic decisions that the collective is going to take moving on. And then all those conversations, and then also commitment to going global. We cannot have this conversation in isolation. We have to open ourselves for global conversations and inputs, because all those voices and perspectives and opinions are going to shape how we look at a certain situation and how we deal with it. And in order to achieve that, it's important that you open and truly make yourself inclusive and welcoming.
Thank you. Thank you, Manav. Sandra, I'd like to deepen the conversation here with you. Manav gave a lot of great examples of working with communities and how this can increase participation. I'd like to talk to you about, or hear from you about what concretely means being a digital public infrastructure, and why it is important, and why does it translate in more participation from women?
Thank you for the question. Speaking to that, I would say that, first of all, I think Manav really laid down very important points in regards to safety, inclusion, and also the ability of ownership, which is very good for digital public infrastructure. What I would say is that for digital public infrastructure is really a very critical aspect, especially for digital transformation. We started from digitization to digitalization, and now it's digital transformation. And it really helps in improving, especially the public service delivery at the community, especially for the marginalized or women, to be specific. And it's very important in this case to prioritize, especially the benefits that women and girls have access in regards to digital public infrastructures, especially in regards to access to services, but also putting in mind some of the points that Manav shared about tackling aspects around gender digital divide, but also looking at the online safety for women, and also looking at the privacy concerns for women and girls to be able to safely, openly, securely access and use some of the digital public infrastructures. And also looking at the aspect of women and girls, we realize that in most cases, women face the barriers of the burden of the digital public infrastructure gaps. And this means that for us to design digital public infrastructure that is favorable, especially for women and structurally silenced groups, it should be very enabling for more women and structurally silenced women to have universal access, to have acceptable, for it to be also affordable, and also for it to be open with no restriction, for it to be meaningful. And this requires also to have equal access for everyone. And also, what is also very important is having content that is very empowering, that is very relevant for women, that is available, that can also be used by women. And this requires women to have equal access to information, and also information that is relevant to them, especially information on sexual and reproductive health and rights, pleasure, information on safe abortion, access to justice, and name it. But also this requires that the information have diversity in terms of language. Is the language enough? I think Manav talked about the aspect of community, being able to have various Wikimedia community user groups across the world, but also having various chapters across the world is very good, because then you are able to have to speak to the language that you also understand, contribute to the language that you understand, but also having the interest of the variety of topics, but also the context, which is also very important. But also looking at the aspect of the digital public infrastructure, I think something that is very important is the localization aspect of it, being able to ensure that some of these the infrastructures, for example, the Wikipedia, ensuring that the women are able to, first of all, design some of these, sorry about the noise, design some of the topics that they are contributing about. The Wiki loves women, Wiki art and feminism, which is also very important. But something that also Manav talked about is about safety and security, ensuring that the public service infrastructure should prioritize the safety and security for women, especially their environment, where they may face a lot of harassment, a lot of abuse, a lot of discrimination, and also having sort of an holistic security, looking at this, the physical security, the digital security, but also the psychosocial security that is also very important. I like that when we were going for the Wiki Women Camp that happened last year in October in India, the aspect of having a pre-online sort of digital security session was very empowering before we could go into the main conference in India, and we were able to really engage in a very comprehensive session of what are the different digital security basics, and also recognizing the universality of our reliance on technology, but also ensuring that everyone is safe when they access and use the internet, understanding the interconnected nature of digital and the physical space was also very important. So such instances like that, I would think, is something that should continue happening. But I would say that for this to happen, I think some of the principles that are very empowering, such as the feminist principle of the internet, that is a set of frameworks that put together for women's rights organization to sort of explore issues that are related to technology, and also offering analysis from the gender and sexual lens, which is also very important. But also something that has been extensively discussed, I'm just from attending the ICT4D conference in Ghana, was the principle of digital development, which says design for the youth, for inclusion, ensuring that everyone is included in the design. This could be the internet, this could be Wikipedia, this could be even the platforms that was talked about, Facebook, ensuring that this platforms is not discriminating, and also it relates to the barriers that women, disability, the income, and also looking at the geographical aspect of it, which is also very important in regards to ensuring everyone is accessing and using the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And that's a very good point on design for inclusion. Kat, I would like to come to you, and perhaps you also have thoughts about this design for inclusion, and would like to go a little bit back to the general conversation, the global conversation that we're having about DPIs, and ask you, like, how is gender equality showing up in these processes? Like, for example, in the Global Digital Compact, are public infrastructures like the one we discussed tools that we can leverage to increase participation of gender online? Are they discussed like that?
Lovely. Great questions. Thank you also, everyone who has joined today, and thank you to all fellow panelists. It's really an honor to be in a conversation with you all. And some of you I get to work with, which is really exciting. One question for the moderators of this panel: can I share links? Is that available? So I thought I'd just give a small background about, it's not just the work that I do, but the organization that I'm coming from. The Web Foundation was actually started by the person who invented HTML, invented websites. So the reason we have www on top of the internet, the physical infrastructure that we use to connect, is because of the founder of our organization. And so the foundation seeks to realize the original vision. Why would you invent websites? And the idea behind inventing this layer that goes on top of the internet was for anybody around the world to be able to connect and share their creativity and share their ideas. And really the tagline we have is that this is an open, free, available tool for anyone, or for everyone, is what we say. So I just shared just the last week was the 35th anniversary of the web. This is a very recent innovation that is shaping all of our lives. And I think sometimes as we work in these spaces, realizing that really it's only 35 years that we've had this opportunity to try to have this global conversation about what does the online space mean, and how do we govern it. And so there's just some thoughts in there from the founder, from the inventor, Tim, on where he's sort of seen the potential of that vision and also the barriers. And some of the barriers right now are really, as we're speaking about today, kind of the threats to digital public infrastructure. And you can think of the web as a foundational platform for all of this public infrastructure that we need. There's other kinds of public infrastructure that we use. It doesn't have to just be in an online space. But without an open, free web that anybody can connect to, then all of these other tools that we're supporting and we're building and we're putting our efforts into won't have a place for people to access. So there are two main issues that Tim recognizes in there. One is, and he really cites with how the web is governed and the organizations that operate on it. One is that many people's experience of going online happens through companies. And so your entire experience is actually going through a vertical of one single organization. You can imagine spending all day on the web, really just on three kind of tools or products or apps, and you're actually just localized in one company alone. And that was never the intention. It was that anybody would be able to open up a site and share their ideas. And another is this perception that we have in the private sector and also in governments that the way of navigating online and the way of being effective is to really siphon data. And that the more data and personal data that we have about individuals is how we're going to add value, be able to make profit, but also be able to understand why we're so divided. And why there's issues online that need to be overcome. So recognizing that the ways that people are actually experiencing the web is anathema to a public good that anybody could use and understand and govern and influence. And I would say that Sandra spoke a bit about the need for the content that we have online to be something that is useful, that is available, and specifically useful in a gendered space. And I'd offer also that all of the governance of how that content is developed, what are the rules around it, how is it updated, all of that has to happen in a public way and as a kind of public good. So who gets to decide what safety by design means, and who gets to enforce that? And that also needs to happen in a very public way. How do these processes happen at the UN, and how the UN Global Digital Compact is happening this week? The UN Commission on the Status of Women is happening this week, and there's many conversations about how these discussions lead into the Global Digital Compact that will be announced in September. So one of those conversations that we're having is across multi-stakeholder civil society organizations, multi-stakeholder organizations working with civil society. So there I've also shared 9 principles for a gender digital compact. We started compiling these principles about 2 years ago and really started getting traction in this past year. And one of the reasons that we get traction for this is because of the work that happened in the last CSW that was focused on tech. And if you go to sort of page 3, I would say, of the summary of, and I'm adding more links, the summary of the findings that came out of CSW, there are directed requirements for how gendered information is available online and how the tools that we use to ensure an equal experience of women and all their diversity online are supported and sustained. And I think what's important about this is that we can talk about principles and we can set up how civil society would like to see the web get governed. But we also have to engage in these spaces where governments and tech companies and others in civil society are agreeing to a standard set of language. The benefit of having the document that comes out of CSW and come out of the UN is that governments have, through painstaking processes, agreed to this. And so then we can take this and say, this is what you've already agreed to, what are you doing about it? And so in my mind, the next real step that we have in the GDC as the principles of what we would like to get to and where they're getting debated is what is the actual accountability and the transparency mechanism and who gets to govern this? And is it going to be ruled eventually are companies that, again, are somehow in some ways controlling many individuals' entire experience online in one day, everything that you experience is through one company. Are they saying we agree to these principles and trust us, we have adopted it? What is the transparency mechanism? What is the accountability mechanism? How are we in civil society, how are civil society organizations that have been working on feminist principles for decades in the process of accountability, of responsiveness, and of ensuring that these principles are actually met? Thanks.
You, Kat. That was a really, really helpful recap of many conversations that are happening. So I'm gonna go around with a little bit of more deepening questions to all of you, but I just want to share an invitation to also react to each other. If you've heard anything that you would like to ask to others, or you want to use your points to refer to each other, please do so. So I'm gonna go around in backwards, because I want to go back to you, Sandra, and ask about really some of the examples that of the work that you were framing before. You've done a very clear description of the work that is needed and why you're doing this type of work. But I would like to hear also really concrete examples that you shared with me on this.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah, so for the examples related, especially to Wikipedia and related projects that really tends to increase a lot of community collaboration. I would say that first of all the projects that are done by the community really increase a lot of community collaboration. First of all, Wikipedia being a free online encyclopedia. For example, if I had an article on me, Sandra Acheng, and then you Google it, that's the first thing that you see appearing. But the power of it being created and edited by volunteers makes it really a very collaborative process because, again, it's an open source. Anyone who has an account on Wikipedia is able to contribute, is able to co-create information, and is also able to not just contribute information, but there's also the other part of the images, ensuring that content that is created is also attached to images to make it a reality. So I love that there are various topics, especially on Wikipedia, and also it really touches on the local context and the realities that we have in our communities. For example, if you're interested in food, you're able to contribute on food. There's Wiki Loves, I think, agriculture, but also there's just you sharing things around Wiki Loves. For example, we have Wiki Loves Africa, that you're able to share any cultural aspect that concern you as a community. But also I wanted to talk about different projects that really, for example, in Uganda, Wikimedia Community User Group Uganda, that really tells the stories of the community, and really this is able to contribute a lot to the locality of the community as a whole. So there are various projects that we have done in Uganda, and one of it is Wiki Loves, Wiki for Human Rights, and then there is Wikigap that is currently going, and we have also the Heart and Feminism that is also going to be implemented in Uganda. So looking at all these projects, it's very amazing that we look at also the aspect of ensuring that there's a gender inclusive aspect of having more women participation, recognizing best female contributors to sort of encourage more women participation in being able to close the gender digital the gender divide on Wikipedia. For example, when we conducted a campaign in 2023 under the Wiki for Human Rights Editathon, we recognized the best female contributor. And I would like to quote this from a user called Atiang344. And usually when we are when we are conducting these editathons, or community gatherings, I like to hear what really inspired especially females to be able to participate, but sort of tell the story to the world for other women to be able to contribute and sort of close this gap on Wikipedia. So she said, firstly, I want to congratulate all the winners and also appreciate the campaign organizers. I am a human rights advocate, and the campaign theme really aligned to my interests. So the editathon has been an interesting and challenging experience for myself because my main focus was creating articles on Wikipedia, which is a smooth experience for the first time. But with support from the campaign team and fellow editors, I managed to create some and be among the top winners. From the campaign, I learned the environmental protection against environmental pollution and climate issues, and its responsibility for everyone, including the individuals, the household, the government, to conserve environment. I can't wait to contribute more to the next campaign. So this was really inspiring. First of all, being recognized for your participation. Again, but contribution on Wikipedia is totally free of charge. You are not paid for you to be participate on Wikipedia because it's an open source and we want to increase as more information as possible about things that concern us. And when Wikipedia for Human Rights started, especially in 2020, there were around very few editors. If I could check the statistic here, there were only 6 females that joined the participation out of the 16 editors in 2020. And looking at 2023, about 18 female editors out of the 46 participants joined the participation. And for me, I would think that this is a massive progress towards the involvement of more women to close the gender gap on Wikipedia, but also having more articles created. For example, there are about 59 new English Wikipedia articles created on Wikipedia and about 45 Luganda Wikipedia articles created. And Luganda is a locally spoken language that is widely spoken in Uganda, especially in the central part of Uganda. So you can see that besides the contribution in English, we are also trying to promote content to be understood by other people who might not understand English. And then there were other contributions on Wikidata, around 221 Wikidata items and 93 photos uploaded, which I really prioritize because it's part of visibility, especially in ensuring that more women are visible on Wikipedia. And for me, photos really speak to me in campaigns and also other projects. But also other projects, like I mentioned, after like the Wikigap discard currently going, which is about closing the gender divide on Wikipedia, creating content by women for women. But we realize that there's still a huge gap in terms of content created by women. You know, we have content created on women, but we don't have content created by women. So what are we going to do to ensure that this content is created? And I like that we had conversations, especially during the WikiCamp last year, on sort of creating a strategy for women to ensure that more women are involved in discussions around ensuring that women's issues are being prioritized on Wikipedia. And that was really very empowering, ensuring that we have more women administrators who are able to approve articles that are created by women, but also sort of ensuring that the stories are being told about women right, first of all. The language that is being used is also right. The content that is being used is also right. So that is why we need more empowerment for women to be able to collaborate and contribute more information on Wikipedia. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and also for touching some really, really key points about language, which I think are also making, again, the case for digital public goods to be community-led, because we know that that doesn't necessarily happen when they're not the communities driving for that. Right. And so, Manav, I would like to hear from you on similar points, concrete examples like Sandra gave, and also, again, what does it mean? Why a community-led model? Why a digital public goods is important for increasing participation, etc. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I think within the Wikimedia world, within this Wikimedia ecosystem, we have been talking about gender gap for many years now. We have been taking active steps to bridge the gender gap. And when we talk about gender gap, this gap not only exists in terms of how the content is available on our project, but it's also quite visible in terms of the number of contributors that we have in the movement, and also in terms of the leadership within the movement. There's a campaign which is currently going on, which is Wikipedia needs more women, because 49% of our readers identify as women, but only 13% of the Wikipedia editors identify as women. And that's a huge gap to work on. Balanced women representation is not just about fairness, it's about unlocking our society's full potential, because without it, we risk overlooking the crucial needs and limiting the progress. Empowering women isn't just the right thing to do. I think it's the essential thing for a thriving future. And for that, there are many, many kind of initiatives which are going on. Specifically focusing on what is being done in the movement, we do have affiliates. Affiliates are the recognized Wikimedia movement entities. They are the affiliates that work on specific initiatives. We have Wiki Loves Women user group, which actually focuses on prioritizing women content, women information in the movement, and also representation. We do have many other projects like Art and Feminism, which Sandra mentioned. We have Wikidone project as well. And all these affiliates are collectively working on bridging the gap in alternative ways. I briefly spoke about forming a Wiki Women collective earlier today, but during the Wiki Women camp that has been brought in the conversations by Sandra and me, this is a global space of conversations where women from different projects, different communities came together, and we talked about how we can provide capacity support to enhance women contribution in the movement, to see more women as grantees, to see more women as leaders in the movement, and not only that, but also to strategically think about what kind of support is needed, what kind of data is needed, what are our basic needs that can actually help shape these kind of initiatives in the future. One of the outcomes is the global declaration that we have released. This declaration for now is the Wiki Women Camp Declaration, because this was an outcome of the conversations that happened during the camp. We are taking this declaration global in the coming month, where we are going to reach out to the different communities. We are going to talk to them to identify if this is something that aligns with their thought process, if this is something that they can relate to, or if they're proposing some sort of modifications. Also, as an outcome of those conversations, we realized that there is need of creating a strategic committee that exclusively focuses on representation of women. Because generally what we do is, when we're focusing on gender gap, there are multiple aspects of working on gender gap. We can talk about Visible Wiki campaign, where we provide pictures, we provide faces to all these articles that do not have a picture of women on them. We have editathons where we write about women. We have commons campaigns, and there are multiple projects which are also run in close collaboration with allied organizations. For example, we used to do Wiki for Women with UNESCO. We are doing WikiGap campaign with Swedish consulates, and there are many other campaigns that are being run globally. But all these associations with allied organizations are dependent on their priorities as well. If this is something which is a focus area for them in this year, and that is when we'll execute these kind of programs. But for us to be able to strategically think about programs, their future iteration, their growth, and their impact, it's important that we need a core committee that exclusively focuses on this. And that's why we are working on creating a Wiki Women collective. Not only that, last year we started a Wiki Women Summit organization. This is a formal space for women to come together and talk about gender gap. And I think the one major point that we want to highlight in all these conversations is that gender gap is a problem of representation of women, but gender gap is not a women problem. It's not something that women have to work on and lead. We have been creating safe spaces so that women can walk in and talk about their challenges, but we need to take the next big step. And the next big step is to preparing our communities acknowledge this gap, acknowledge that there are barriers that we are not conscious of, and we need to work on them. And for that, we need to create a space where everyone can walk in, and there everyone can actually feel safe to talk about their challenges, about the barriers that they have faced, and no one is feeling offended because of the oversight that we have, because sometimes we are not aware of anything that is a part of the general execution of events and can actually hugely impact someone else's comfort in someone else's security that they feel in that space to talk about their challenges and next steps. This is something that should go global. This is something that should be taken up by everyone, but at the same time, we do believe that this is something that can be taken up by everyone, but we still need more representation of women because of our perspectives, because of our unique experiences, because of our unique needs, and because of the sensitivity that we have around this, because we have been in this situation. We are the ones who have walked miles in these shoes, and we really want others to empathize and support this. These are the strategic steps that we are taking. But again, this is something which we do not want to do in isolation. Wikimedia is a space where we welcome allied organizations to help us with their experiences and expertise as well. So we have also been reaching out to the allied organizations who have already started working in this direction. We have been taking directions from the documents that have been released as an outcome of their strategic conversations, and definitely seek more input and support as we advance forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Manav. This was really, really helpful. I'd like to come back to you, Marianne, and ask you, after all of this conversation, and we touched really a lot of different points, my question, coming back to your original statement of how the definition of DPIs has changed, etc., is really, what would we miss if we don't manage as civil society, as organizations to come back to that original definition of DPIs, and who should be, how do we work on that?
Yeah, what we would miss, I think, is the essential aspect of I mean I think that is something that we kind of like a lot of us have given up on, but not us here, which is the notion of an open, safe internet for everyone, and of the internet as a vehicle for change. I don't like to use the word development because I think it's colonialistic and it kind of based on financial goals, but of growth in all of the senses of the word growth, right? Of learning, of individuals and communities reaching their goals and their potential. And that internet that we dreamt of right now is not what we have. And the concepts that are being pushed are not helping that either. I still believe in that. I know that many of us do believe in that up to a certain degree. And I think that in terms of what we need to be doing as a community, there are many conversations happening. Namely, I can think, for instance, right now, there is a conversation on safeguards for DPI happening at United Nations for Development that is like really happening right now. They want to push things out by the next few weeks. And I think that while, of course, we need safeguards for this, if we are starting from a concept that is not a concept that we agree on, then the safeguards are not going to be the safeguards that we need. And I think that the key point there is that their current concept that, like, thankfully they accept that it is an evolving concept, but the current concept, it has a strong focus on DPIs are for governance purposes. And that is not what we believe on. Governance can be one of the goals of DPI, but there are other things that are also important. And if DPIs are for governance, DPIs are for the government and not for the people. In the same way that I always say when we talk about digital ID systems, which are at the core of this concept of DPI, we are not talking about the rights of the citizens to identify themselves, because this is a human right. We are talking about the rights of the states to identify the citizens, which is a completely different thing. So don't talk to me about human rights, because that's not human rights, that's states' rights. So we need to flip that and open it up a little bit, like create some air in the definition, so that we can really think about safeguards in terms of human rights and safeguards in terms of sustainability that can help the concept like integrate both of the things, what they think it is and what we think it is, and the things in between, which is basically that we are thinking on the sustainability of all things digital in a way that helps our communities and helps the global communities to have spaces that are not privately owned and work under that logic, but that work under a logic of public, under a logic of commons, under the logic that they belong to everyone. So everyone has input on how they work, and everyone can feel free there. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that also implies to have a conversation that most people don't want to have, apparently, because I say this because I keep bringing it up, and the answer again is not great. A conversation about the right to anonymity. Because if we keep focusing it on identity and the right of the state to identify everyone, if we're talking about the right of the citizen, the right of a person, if I have a right to identity, I have a right to anonymity, because that's how rights work, right? Like we have, that's the concept of having a right. If it's not, that's an obligation if I cannot choose. So that is how it's framed right now. But I need to be able to choose. I need to be able to have places where I can be anonymous in a safe way, where I can express myself and engage with others and know other people in a safe way. And I think that what we need to do is to get more involved in those spaces and bring this into that concept and that framework and create a. And this is a big year for that, leading up to the GDC. Like there are things that are going to be happening later as well, but we really do need to get things in now, like at least say them very clearly, very loud, to leave clear that we have a position in this, that the collective, the community has a position on this.
Thank you, Marianne. And yes, I very much appreciate both you're stressing the fact that, you know, we've been living in this internet, in this type of internet for so long that deep down we think it's unmovable, but it is actually really being discussed, and this is really could really change in ways that mean less participation and more centralized governance. And also the point about anonymity is really important, as you know. It's also for Wikimedia projects, it's really, really important. And the reason why it is so important is because we know that for many people to participate online and to participate in sharing information, they need to have that anonymity. Not having that means shutting out a lot of people. And so, like, thank you for making that point. Kat, I'd like to hear your perspective on this issue of governance and why DPIs governed by governments or private companies are very, very different looking animals than DPIs governed by civil society, and what does that mean?
Thank you. It's a very good question, and I think, you know, what we're seeing in the issue of gender and how civil society governs is that civil society often works in coalitions, and coalitions are probably the strongest way that we have to have the reach and scope that a government or a private sector tech company may have. So we do really rely on multiple different organizations working together from many different geographies, many different areas of expertise. And so we practice consistently. How do you share information? How can you operate in a way where others can understand what the context is, how it applies to their local sector, their geographies, what can be picked up, and what can be adopted, what can be scaled, and what doesn't apply. And it's this foundation that we need when we're trying to build the kinds of governance and online governance that's necessary for everyone in the world. One example of why this is so necessary from our own experience comes from some work that we've been doing for the past about 4 years at the Web Foundation on Technology Policy Design Labs. Sandra and WOCNET are a member of something called Women's Rights Online, which is a global coalition of gender justice and digital rights organizations. And so Web Foundation works with these organizations to try to get changes in policy and also changes in the processes and products that are coming out of tech platforms. I just shared another link to the overview of our work. And in the earlier stages of that work, we got these big concessions from the tech platforms that said, we hear you, we need to make changes to how people are users and women in all their diversity particularly are experiencing the online space. So how are they curating their experience? We also need to make changes to how easy is it to report and how quickly do you get a response? And so they agreed. We had a big announcement at Generation Equality Forum, which many of you might be involved with. So a big UN event. And then we came back with them and worked with them. And a year later said, all right, so now you've had a year. We agreed that you would have 1 year to implement these changes. Show us what you've done. And they shared great screenshots of how it looks different, and it looks different to report, and it looks different to have a response. And we said, okay, and now share your data. What's the turnaround time? What are people's experiences of how quickly they were able to have NCII taken down, or have a user who's harassing another user, a predator who's harassing them to be responded. And they said, well, we can't share that data. That's not available to us. And what we realize is that when you allow the governance of the public space to be localized by one organization, which can be a company or it can be a government using what often happens, as we've seen, is that a government will say, what's the standard bearer out there? We'll just copy that. And so they copy specifically what the companies already have. So what we do need is an independent accountability from civil society, from the public space, from communities, to be able to evaluate whether the goods that we're using, whether these public goods that we're using are really serving all of us. We cannot leave them in the hands of those who are still able to have opacity and hide behind concerns of shareholders or concerns of, well, we don't know if the regulation would allow us to do this. If this is the commons that we are asking for, we are asking to know if our commons is safe, then we need the information to know whether the commons is safe. And we have the skills, expertise, and the tools to ensure that that information can be held secure. And if it can be held secure, then do not collect it from us. And so really what we're working for and have always been working for from the foundations of the invention of the web is a space where the people are the drivers of the content. They are the drivers of the governance of that content, and that the ultimate voice of what needs to be appearing online comes from civil society.
Thank you, Kat. That was fantastic. So now I would like to open a little bit to questions. I know we are collecting questions from the YouTube channel, so sharing a invitation for everybody who is watching this, if they have questions, to please send them around. In the meantime, that we wait for questions from the public, I'd like to give this opportunity to you to ask questions to each other, if you would like. And if not, I'm just gonna keep pinging you. So I'll just stop here and see if there are questions, either from the public or from the panel. I hear silence. But I see. Okay, so one comment that I will transform in a question that we have from the public is about working on gender parity. It's important for Wikimedia projects, but also on other minority groups. And so I'd like to hear from you either how we think of participation from other groups, and also if you have experiences or examples to point to, and I'll open this to all four of you because you all have great perspective on this, so whoever wants to jump in.
I can go first because we have been thinking about this a lot. I think even during the camp, and we have been calling it Wiki Women Camp, but I think there's a lot of intersectionality there. Many women belong to other minority groups as well, women of color, LGBTQ+, and focusing solely on gender might overlook these overlapping identities. And that's why this was a core thought behind the whole scope of Wiki Women Camp. And at the same time, we do also want to acknowledge the fact that when we are creating this space for all these intersectional representations through women, we are also conscious that this might not be the right space to talk about other minorities when we are focusing on gender, because in order to do justice to the conversation that you are bringing to the table, you should be aware and informed to have that conversation, to hold it well. And that's why we're not doing it. And the reason why we are prioritizing gender gap is because this is a much realized gap. The world is shared equally by men and women. And then this is quite visible in terms of how we live in this world. There are equal number of men and women on this world, not equal, but comparatively equal. But at the same time, that reflection of representation is not balanced in terms of internet, in terms of how we represent ourselves on internet, how we contribute to different conversations, how we participate in strategic discussions. And because this gap is quite visible, well acknowledged, and we have been taking measures to work on this, that's why this is something that we are prioritizing. We are not saying this is something which is more important than other representations. We do acknowledge and realize that there are gaps and we need to work on them. But for us as a collective, why we are focusing more on this is because of the intersectionality that it brings, and because of the realized gap and the shared struggles that we have, that we believe will be able to bring all this together also in a way, but still focusing on something that is much more realized, much more wider in terms of gap. Yeah. Thank you.
That is awesome. I'm gonna repeat the question just for those who weren't so the question is, we're talking about gender parity, but also having this open participation is important for many other minority groups, and so how do we think of this beyond gender? We also have another question if none of you want to jump in here. So I think, okay. So we have a really interesting question. And the question is, speaking from your heart, can DPI be stopped, or are we at the point where we can only shape it or do damage mitigation? Interesting question. Can DPI ever be safe? So Marianne, I will direct this to you.
Also Thomas probably direct this to me. But Sandra had raised her hand for the previous question, so I don't know if maybe we could do that.
Oh, sorry, Sandra. I thought you were saying, please go ahead. Okay, no, sorry. So then let's go to Sandra and then we'll go to this question.
Okay. I would have made better use of the technology, sorry. So I think I wanted to add something in regards to the gender parity, beyond the gender parity. I think one thing that I've been sort of reflecting, and something that is really, really misconceived is about understanding localization, and what does localization really would mean, especially for the digital public good. I think it's something that is very important, and this is also ties to the aspect in regards to achieving or trying to bridge the gender disparity on Wikipedia. And for me, speaking into in regards to localization or digital localization is, first of all, what we gathered together during the Wikicamp, understanding the needs of the women, but also not just understanding the needs of just women, but the representation of different voices of women. I think that is a very important aspect in regards to being able to close the gender divide or closing the gender disparity on Wikipedia. And once the needs are being understood, I think it really guides on what then needs to be done for the needs to be done, for the needs to be achieved. And these things like designing with the users, which was very important, and sort of designing what is fit for the community, which is very important, and bringing different diversity of women across the world speaking about issues that are of concern in their community. I feel that was localization, sort of speaking the reality that women face in this community, and people like us who had the chance can be ambassadors in our community to be able to strengthen the work that is being done to close the gender parity, to close the gender digital divide on Wikipedia. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So back to the question from Tom, Marianne, and then Kat also has some input. And just a time check that we only have 10 minutes, so we need to be quick.
I will be fast and speak out from my heart, as Thomas required. The current concept of digital public infrastructure that is being, like Thomas, I working together on this, that is not in reference of the internet, really. It is in reference of the technology that is implemented outside of the internet, using the internet, of course, for communication, but mostly payments and identity and everything in between that is for service delivery from governments. Sadly, it cannot be stopped. Do I want to stop it? Yes. I want to burn it. I want to kill it. I want fire. But no, it's too late. I think that the road right now is to do a lot of work, because it is going to take a lot of work. This concept has taken a hold, like a really, really deep hold in spaces of power, like states and places like the World Bank, the places that handle the money. And we need to do a lot of work to crack that concept open and make it anew, so that it includes other things, and particularly that it becomes a big enough umbrella that it can include what we're talking about right now, this digital public infrastructure that we urgently need. I'm very pro that. And as for whether it is safe, I will tell you, as a former digital security trainer, that safe doesn't exist. We can make it safer. We can create safeguards. We can create principles that try to align things in a way that makes it better, but nothing is truly safe. And what we have right now is also not safe. Safe doesn't exist. So yeah, it can be safer. We can work on the implementation of proper safeguards, but also thinking that it is not going to be safe, that it is going always to have consequences, and therefore we also need processes for remedy and redress in place for when it fails, because it will eventually fail. And as all technology, it will eventually fail. So I don't know if that's a good answer that Thomas wanted, but it's the one I have.
Yeah. Kat, I know you wanted to add something there.
I mean, I think what Marianne said is perfect. But and then also just, you know, appreciating Tom's work at Epicenter and the work that you do on neutrality, on improving against surveillance. And I think, you know, when I think about this question of like, you know, can we wrestle it back? Can we make something that is perfect and safe? We're always a work in progress. Life is a work in progress. Governance is a work in progress. The invention of the web, it was never, we invented it, we're done. It's being improved every day. And we think of it as being improved every day. And I shared the quote yesterday, sort of a adaptation of a quote from a US president that our problems are made by us and they can be solved by us. You know, none of this is so grand and so complex. I think there is this idea that because it's technology and because it's moving so rapidly, that we're in some kind of new space that is unattainable. And you know, and we're seeing that this kind of anxiety that comes with from working in this space. And we see a lot of companies, we see a lot of governments saying, can I just solve this? Can I maybe use AGI? Is that going to solve this? And, you know, we heard before, could we just use blockchain to solve this? Could we, and when the internet was first invented, could the internet solve this? All of our problems are made by us. All of the work is made by us, and we work on it every day. And so, you know, I think, Tom, you know that very well. And so it's so I understand your question more to be a provocation of when can civil society and this and a global space get the upper hand? And I think the big gap that we're seeing is happening now is that we don't have regulation, we don't have laws, we don't have accountability. We've sort of let the innovations run wild. And so the space for minoritized voices, for women, other diversity, as happens with any new innovation, it can be used to expand a lot of freedoms and a lot of prosperity, but it can also follow our patterns of clamping down. And so it is now we are in this moment of this effort to govern this space so that it can be a place where those who have been minoritized are really demonstrating how their leadership, their creativity, their innovations, their you know, exploration of education, the inventions that we're making, and really our voice. So that's the charge that we have in front of us.
Thank you, Kat. Manav, you shared a really great saying. Do you want to share it?
Yeah, I think there is a saying that we are not merely connected, we are being orchestrated. And this highlights the potential dangers if DPI is left unchecked. We need to continuously work to shape the future of DPI, prioritizing safety, inclusion, and responsible development. And a quote actually I go by in all conversations related to safe spaces is that security is a process, not a product. So this is something that needs continuous evaluation, continuous adoption, and also commitment from everyone involved to actually follow it thoroughly and to commit to creating these spaces, to creating more safe spaces. Yeah, and then this is a process that needs continuous evolution as well. Yeah, so we do assume good faith. There is a principle that we go by in the Wikimedia movement, that is assuming good faith and believing in everyone, that we are all in this together. And that is something that keeps us going and is hopefully going to work for us as we move forward and advance towards setting these guardrails. Thank you.
Thank you, Manav. With 3 minutes to spare, I'm gonna ask Sandra a very difficult question coming from Kat. So please try this very difficult thing of keep it short. So Kat asks, how solutions that are being developed in Uganda can be more easily shared and learned by others? And inversely, what makes a global digital public good or infrastructure easy to share and understand for those working at national level? That's an excellent question.
An excellent question and a difficult question, but I'll try to answer, Kat, and I hope that I will answer. So what I can say is that for me, from experience and what I've seen being done is, first of all, research, which I think is, first of all, having data, the available data that is necessary for the community to be able to understand, and also for us to be able to understand the needs of the community. And then, secondly, who are the stakeholders that you're trying to work with? Map the stakeholders that you're trying to work with, and understand, I think through research, understand the needs that the needs that the community or the stakeholders want. And then one thing that that also I've seen work is ensuring that for the global public good to work, I think it should be accessible and inclusive, especially for a specific community, because if you're working with it at a national level, it should be able to resonate with what is in the reality of the community, especially like, let's say, Uganda or any other country. So this involves sort of understanding the culture, how culture maybe affects the specific group, for example, women, using tech, and not assuming that the solution will work for the community because it exists, but also ensuring that we have the relevant content that is for the targeted community. And this involves a lot of integration of language, the images, aligning sort of the messaging to the culture, but also sort of having process definition, and also having the available regulatory compliance that is with the community. So that is what I would say, but also having the right tools in place, having the right resources that is in place that can serve the interest, that can serve the benefit of the society. And for me, I think anything that is built, that is operated, that is also governed in a very transparent, in a very accountable, in a very equitable manner, can really be something honed by the community and can be achievable by the community. So I feel that this is what I would say in regards to that, and also having the aspect of knowledge sharing, collective partnership, and also upholding the principles of privacy, the security, and also ensuring that the rights of the people who are using the public good is being protected. So that is what I would say, and I hope that I've answered your question, Kat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I think this was a terrific way to end this conversation. We are unfortunately already going over time, even though there will be so much more to say. But I just want to thank again all of our speakers. This was an amazing conversation that leaves me inspired. This is the reason why we do this work. And so thank you so much, and thank you all for watching and to Access Now for co-hosting with us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, all. Good job, Costanza.
Good jobs to you. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
Good
so
job, Constanza. Good job, everyone. You were